Welcome to Revlog.
Pastor's back.
I'm back. Yeah, I need to say thank you to Scott Lane, who filled in for me last week. Had a little bit of a tooth concern I was dealing with.
That's a gentle way of saying that, Pastor.
Yeah, well.
Hope you got some money for the tooth. But anyway.
I paid a lot of money for the tooth.
Money exchanged hands. Okay, well, that's all we'll
Money
say
did
about
exchange
that. All right, I
hands,
love
yeah.
that. It's a grown-up version of that.
Yes. Well, today, as we come to Mark 5, the end of Mark 5, we have a kind of a story within a story. The story at the center here we'll do next week. Mm-hmm. Now, this week we're dealing with a young girl, the daughter of a synagogue official. And so, Brian, you help us get started. So you hear this story again.
Yeah.
What's your initial reaction to this text?
How tender Jesus is with this little child. And, he has to cut through a lot of hubbub, really, to get to her. The mourners are there and all this. And a lot of this, all this is the cultural outpourings of how this goes, the mourners and all that. And he says, don't weep, don't be afraid, she's not dead but asleep. And they're derisive in the face of that. And I often, Jesus appears to be out of touch, out of sync.
How often do we think that can't be right?
That can't be right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's at another time, he's looking at all these opulent and ostentatious rich folks are putting their offerings in, and he's captivated by a little widow, who's just insignificant, and so he's looking at things that nobody else is looking at. Yeah. He sees Zacchaeus up in the tree, whatever, and so he says, "This is not the end of the story," and then he goes to her, and his way with her is so tender, and little girl, get up. That's I can hardly take that in because it's so tender.
Amen.
And his way is that way with all of us. He has something else for us besides the overwhelm and the grief and the sadness or the sickness or whatever that we're engulfed in. And he raises her up and then makes sure that she is taken care of.
Give her some food.
Yeah, give her something to eat. Yeah.
And that is just so beautifully sweet. Every part of her and her family is taken care of.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. And on the same level, I would say Jesus' care for her father too was as sweet.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right.
Aaron, what was your initial reaction here?
I want to speak to that.
Yeah.
But as Brian, as you're speaking, I was thinking when you were kind of unpacking that, that can't be right. Jesus' statement, she's just sleeping, that can't be right. Because what does that mean for the rest of us? If that's true, then the professional mourners, those are the people that showed up to, then what am I doing here? What if what he's saying is true? It's much easier for me to just go about doing what I always have done and go about my business. But then if what he's saying is true, that's going to throw everything into disarray, which is kind of the nature of the gospel. It just takes everything and throws it into disarray.
Turns the world upside down.
Amen. Yeah. My thought that struck me as I reread this morning was that moment where they come to them on the way and they say, don't even bother coming. She's dead. It's over. And then Jesus, and again, it's arresting for him to say, it's not true. Have faith. And as a dad, as
Yeah.
Jairus doesn't want to bother him beyond, this is such an honor for this Jesus, this rabbi, to come to his house, and he's willing to come.
And it's such a sweet interaction between the two of them.
Yeah, and he's the fact that he's coming is a big deal, and then it's too late. You go back doing what you're doing, and then there has to be this moment of this crisis of faith, literally, where Jesus looks at Jairus and says, Here's where it happens, right here. Mm-hmm. She's just sleeping. It's not true. You have to have faith, and the line that we often say, I believe, help my unbelief.
Right.
Like I really want to believe everything you say.
Yeah.
But she's dead.
Yeah.
What? How? And so there has to be a moment in this dad's heart where he goes, am I going to believe these people that are from my house that have come, or is he really who he says he is?
Yeah.
And am I going to risk disappointment? Am I going to put hope in? It was one thing when she was ill. It's one thing when she's clinging to life. It's another thing.
That's too much, really. I mean, really, we find that's just too much for us to go to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Don't break my heart anymore than it already
and
is.
his willingness to go, okay, let's go on. Let's take those next steps.
Yeah. Right.
Those have to be harder than the first ones.
Absolutely.
Because what if I put my faith in somebody, and then my faith that I put in this teacher is gone, my daughter is dead, and where am I?
Right.
Yeah.
And Jesus sees that in that moment, before we get there, says, it happens right here.
Yeah. Amen.
Trust me.
Yeah, well said. Brian, what question do you have from this story?
Can the end possibly be not the end? I think that Jesus said, like with Lazarus, Lazarus has fallen asleep. Jesus said, another use of the word sleep there, with Jesus. And then he raises Lazarus from the dead. This girl asleep, the sleep of death, raises this little girl. Each time, these folks have said, this is the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When Jesus himself was in the tomb, that was the end. Can the end can something to which I have ascribed the end possibly be not the end with Christ?
Yeah. Yeah, amen.
I mean, it's a metaphor for our faith in general. I mean, all of us are appointed to die once.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Lazarus eventually died, but even that wasn't the end.
Yeah.
In the light of the resurrection of Christ.
Well, this little girl eventually died too.
But for all of us, whether or not we're raised to walk around again, to get life back in us in this mortal coil, that we will. That's.
Amen. Aaron, what question do you have of the text?
Well, I think we may not be faced with the crisis of faith like Jairus here, but I think at some point in all of us will come to some place where it is, whether it is health or finances, your children, job. I mean, there's a million things. Our addictions, our sin, and where we desperately want to trust Jesus, and we see some hope off in the distance, but in the midst of desperate news, in the midst of just devastation, he goes, "It's not over.
Yeah.
Will you trust me?"
Yeah.
And we have to, each one of us, answer that. Will you?
Yeah. Amen. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story of healing and resurrection as well, if you'd comment below.